Okay, so I think we are live in YouTube now. There was some technical issues, so apparently I got the wrong stream key. But now I think we are live in YouTube, so hello to the YouTube viewers. I saw there were 2 viewers waiting. We are still waiting for the tournament to start. I think there are 2 more people who needs to join. Let's see. Pretty sure there's 2 more. I think it's Glenn Jacob and I think it's let's see, Hudson. Oh, Alvin. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we are starting. And there are 4 ongoing games. Okay. Okay, we can see here. See the top rated one, Jonathan Joy versus Wilson Lewis. You can see here. Okay. Let's see. So there are 4 ongoing tournaments. Currently, we are seeing all 4. A lot of time has been spent by Wilson Lewis here in the 3rd game. Let's hop into this game. Actually, yeah, let's go back to this game. You can see Bishop takes. Very fast pacings from both players. You can see they have developed how many pieces is this? 3 of the pieces. The rooks still passive. In the back line, we can see the queens. They are trying to somehow, maybe you can see Jonathan here trying to find some ideas with the queens here, with his queen. Now Wilson Oh, the pre-move from Jonathan Joy. Now Wilson here with the +5 advantage in materials. Now he might just do a queen sacrifice. Ooh, this move here. The knight. The queen takes. Now, this might be a trade of queens. Now, we might see a queenless game here from Wilson Lewis and Jonathan Joy. Okay, let's see. Jonathan Joy and Wilson Lewis here. It's their game. 8 minutes in. The first check. I think this is the first check within the tournament. +17 in material. Oh, he might be able to make this game his. Castling might be a bad choice here. Oh, but now he can just double his rooks. He might just get a ladder checkmate here, but then the king can move to f4. Rook to c3, trying to challenge the bishop, and now of course pushing the pawn in the g file. The bishop trying to be challenged here. Now Jonathan Joy here might need to run away. Let's see the other games. Let's see, Nicholas versus Glenn Jacob here. Oh, where's the king? Oh, it's already castled safe here. Now this might be a good idea, but at the same time, this might result in a back rank checkmate. Oh, pushing the pawn. A pawn push from Glenn Jacob. The pawn break. Takes. Ooh. With the check. But this isn't really forking anyone. Glenn Jacob with 1 minute advantage on the clock and +1 material. The knight versus the bishop. But this bishop might... Oh, this is the light squared bishop. Now we know that the black king is actually in a... The default is in a light square. Now this might be losing. Maybe, I don't know. You can see here. Trying to challenge the file, attacking the king, Glenn Jacob. He might just win the match. Let's hop to another game here. Hansen versus Ansel. You can see. Ooh. Hansen. +3 material. That's a bishop, and I think... yeah, that's only one bishop. Okay. With the white pieces, Ansel trying to find some ideas here. The queen is out for Hansen, supporting the bishop, challenging the pawn over at f4. Well, moving the rook on the open b file. This might be a good move, but then how are you going to plan on challenging? There's the pawn over at c6 might be proven to be very annoying for Ansel here. Let's hop off to another game. Oh, two Owens. Owen versus James Owen. We can see here. Very interesting gameplay. Both kings tucked in the king side of the board. Not much attack happening over at the queen side. We can see that the king some attack here, supported by the knight. The pawn over at g6. It's pretty strong, actually. Being attacked by the bishop, both the bishop and the queen. James Owen. Okay, going back to the game of the two Owens. One of the Owens actually. Getting low on time, but winning in material, so this might be good. Okay, let's see, a lot of changes in the games. Let's see, Jonathan Joey here. Oh, okay, so checkmate black is victorious, and I think that's Wilson Lewis. So we will wait. Wilson will wait for the next match. Let's hop on to Glenn Jacob versus Nicholas here. Glenn Jacob with +7 in material. The queen is out, challenging both the queen and the rook. But the queen here is pretty much pinned to the king. The rooks here might find some ideas with the rooks. The rook is in a very active square. Glenn Jacob. He might just blunder his piece here. You can see here. Now, with the pawn moving forward, this queen is actually... there might be a discovered attack to the bishop. Oh, but the rook. Okay, so this might be a 4 straight winning the queen. Glenn Jacob. Okay, now this might be some sort of mate in 10 or something. Let's see the other games. So Wilson is victorious here. The two Owens. Let's hop to Hansen versus Ansel. I think we haven't been in this game a lot. We can see right off the bat the bishop taking the rook. Now queen taking queen. Now he might just actually, okay, taking with the rook. Now doubling his pawn over at the c file. But Hansen with the +10 in material. Ansel winning just one knight. With no queens on the board from both sides. So this might be a massive game. The king here pretty safe from the light squares. The attack's only coming in from the dark square bishop. This might be game already, but we'll see. The pawns might just march forward. You can see some sort of ideas here. Taking the bishop, with pressuring the bishop with both the pawn as well as the knight. Interesting play here. Hansen with 1 minute advantage in the clock. Okay, let's hop on to another game. Let's see. Oh. And it's a checkmate, and it's a victory from Glenn Jacob with the rook to a7, covered by the knight, and the queen covering this box. Massive game here from Glenn Jacob. So, Glenn Jacob with 1 victory, Wilson Lewis with 1 victory, Timothy going next, and Alvin coming in late, so he ended up with a draw, I think. See. So the timer has run out. I guess the timer stopped on 2 of the games. Wait. Yeah, so I think we are just waiting for the last few games, which is Hansen versus Ansel as well as the 2 Owens. C3 here. Move from Owen, James Owen trying to find a response. The rook move to a3. Oh, the open e-file. The open e-file we can see here might be proven to be devastating for the king. There might be some ideas here, some tactics with 2 rooks as well as the light square bishop. So I think there was 2 players who are not playing due to some technical issues. So we're just going to wait for the 2 games from the 2 Owens as well as Hansen versus Ansel. Let's see. Can I open the Oh, I think the oh, I disabled the chat. Okay. I think that's Hansen versus Ansel here. Let's see. Okay, I think now the live chat is enabled. Now people can spam in the chat if you want. Feel free. Hansen. Okay, the pawn break. Now this might result in a passed pawn for either side. But Hansen with the material advantage. There might be some strategies here that he can use with the rook and the light squared bishop. Now Ansel running low on time with 1 minute left actually on the clock. Trying to find a way to open up the diagonal here. Moving the bishop to c3. Pushing the pawn from Hansen. And of course, and this is pretty much a passed pawn for Hansen. Ansel trying to stop it. The rook coming in for the attack on the king. Let's see. This game is done. The two Owens still going strong. Okay, both Owens. One bishop advantage here. So James Owen actually not having both bishops. Now this might be a disadvantage, while Owen here having the light squared bishop. But then again, the black king is currently in the black square. But the rooks, they might just go into the game taking the rook for rook. And it's pretty much zero. Pushing the pawn. Which pawn should he move actually? Maybe this was. I think this is better because then if takes. Trying to find fight the diagonal here. You can see some ideas. Trying to strike the king. The rook moving. Maybe trying to defend the pawn over at c3. Trying to push the pawn and promote it to a queen. Oh. The rook going back. Now. Oh, threatening the rook even more. Owen here running low on time. 15 seconds on the clock. James Owen pushing another pawn. He might just get this one. H pawn taking g6 and a4 from James Owen. 3 seconds left for Owen. James Owen just keeps on pushing, trying to move the rook to stop, but that's pretty much promotion right here. Takes. Moving the rook, and that's time. James Owen is victorious for this game. Let's go to this is also game. So I think now we will shortly go to the second game. So we will be having the 1 minute break for all the players. I think all of the rounds are done, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, now waiting for round 2. I think round 2 has started. We can see here Glenn Jacob versus Wilson Lewis, Timothy versus Hansen, Alvin versus James Owen, Ansel versus Nicholas, and Jonathan Joey versus Owen. Let's hop onto the number 1 game. You can see the opening. A king's pawn opening from Wilson Lewis. Now, from what I know, Glenn Jacob really likes to play the Scandinavian defense and putting out the queen out first. But we will see how he will play this game. He might just play the Sicilian. and maybe fianchettoing his bishop over to the long diagonal. But we will see. And Jacob's still not making a move. Maybe we'll hop off first. Ooh. Wait, let's see. 4 ongoing games. How do I... Let me refresh the page. Okay. So let's go to Timothy versus Hansen. The knight out. Another king's pawn opening. The knight pressuring. Only defended by the pawn. Reinforcing the pawn over at e4. You can see 2 defenders. Ooh. The knight moved to d4. Takes. So they are both 1 knight off, I guess. One knight each are off the board. The move from Hansen now. Let's see how Glenn Jacob is. He still in? Okay, we can see here he played the Scandinavian defense, dealing with the check. Now the move e5 here is pretty good, but oh, he might just blunder his queen. He might just blunder. Oh my goodness, Glenn Jacob. He might just blundered his queen there. But this is a queenless game, so both players are actually even to an extent. But he didn't get the both kings still having the privilege to castle. You can see some sort of play here. Maybe king moving the king over, maybe castling queenside for Glenn Jacob, and maybe Wilson Lewis can castle kingside. Okay, bishop to d6 from Glenn Jacob. Wilson Lewis castling to kingside as expected. Now linking his rook together. Now he might just have some ideas here, trying to open some files. Oh, and the fianchetto from the bishop proves to be very strong. Now Glenn Jacob might just lost his rook. Now going for the counterattack, taking with the knight. Oh my goodness, Glenn Jacob. Is he going to lose a rook? Is he really going to blunder a rook here? Oh my goodness, Glenn Jacob. Okay, let's see other games. James Owen versus Alvin. Let's see. Currently in the 14th move. Oh, we can see that I think there was some sort of fianchetto happening from James Owen, winning the rook over at a8. Okay, the rook's already linked. And we can see Alvin's here still having his pieces in the default square, still zero activity on the pieces, while James Owen having a very active queen here, pressuring every part of the board. Now there might be a lot of ideas here coming from James Owen. Alvin still having his bishop, his knight, and his rook underdeveloped. His queen on the back rank, not knowing what to do. Oh my goodness, Alvin is in a really bad spot, and James Owen also up in material count. Oh my goodness, this is not a good game for Alvin. Let's see some other games. Looks like Ansel and Nicholas, I think they have finished their game, with Ansel actually being the victor of this game. We can see a what is this name? Some vampire. I think it's called vampire opening. I'm not sure. Nicholas bringing out his queen early. Ooh. very short game, doubling his pawns, and then the rook coming down to h4. Oh, and with this, the checkmate, queen to f1, checkmate. It's very, very good game. Okay, so we can see Glenn Jacob versus Wilson Lewis here. Now Glenn Jacob down by 1 minute. 1 minute and 20 seconds actually. King f2, trying to challenge the rook over at e3. The rook moves back to e5. Oh, and the rook to e1. But this is defended by the pawn. Going for the check over at f5. Glenn Jacob. Wilson Lewis is winning in material count, winning a rook. So now Glenn Jacob needs to find a way to be creative with his 1 rook and 1 knight, as well as his 3 pawns. He did blunder the rook early on in the game with the fianchetto from Wilson Lewis. A very massive loss there, but let's see. Wilson Lewis challenging the knight. The knight goes back. Now this might be a passed pawn for Wilson Lewis, giving him a promotion to a queen. Glenn Jacob here trying to be creative, moving his king back to f7. And the rook from Wilson Lewis over to e4. So this is a Swiss tournament system where there will be 5 rounds where everyone will play, and the positions will determine their rankings in the tournament. It is not an elimination style tournament, if anyone haven't noticed yet. So everyone will get a chance to play 5 rounds, and the winner will be set from there. Okay, Wilson Lewis moving his rook over. Glenn Jacob needs to find a way to win this. Let's hop off to Timothy. Oh, we can see another GG. So it's Hansen versus Timothy. Timothy being the victor. Ooh, okay. So it's a king's pawn opening, and Hansen, I think it's Hansen with the black pieces. Oh wait, no, it's Timothy with the black pieces. So Timothy going for the Sicilian defense. Ooh, okay, moving the bishop back. Now the bishop is very active here, trying to challenge this diagonal. Very strong diagonal here. Moving the knight. Oh, also we can see here a queenside castle from Hansen. I guess this has proven to be not beneficial for him. Let's see the last few moves from Timothy, moving his queen over, preparing the attack with only the king, but you know, having all the rook on the open file. Let's check, moving it back, and that's checkmate, supported by the pawn, which is, yes, that's chess. It's not really disrespecting in any way. Even though it is a really, really good game. We have 1 game left, which is Glenn Jacob versus Wilson Lewis. We can see here Wilson Lewis having the material advantage. So will Glenn Jacob find a way to actually clutch this as a victory? Now down by 2 minutes now on the clock. Wilson Lewis up by 2 minutes, as well as a 3 piece in materials. Oh, this is very bad for Glenn Jacob. I think he blundered his queen early on in the game for this one. Moving the knight back. Oh, is that a promotion? Oh my goodness, it's a promotion. Okay. Glenn Jacob here. The black pieces. At this point, it's the end already. And Glenn Jacob resigned from the game. And that is pretty much round 3. And let's tell the participants to please wait for round 2. And let them wait for the 3rd round. You can see James Owen with 2 victories. Wilson Lewis with 2 victories. Timothy with 2 counted victories. Hansen with 1. Owen has 1. Ansel with 1. Glenn Jacob with 1. Alvin with half a point. And Jonathan, Joey, and Nicholas with 0 for now. The next round in 15 seconds. We will wait together for 15 seconds. And the game is on. We can see James Owen with Timothy, Ansel versus Wilson, Owen versus Hansen, Alvin versus Glenn Jacob. Actually, this is going to be a very interesting game. And Nicholas versus Jonathan Joy. Let's see, Alvin versus Glenn Jacob. They are the 7th and 8th ranked players, but I did had the chance to play them personally. I had the chance to play them both, and it didn't end great for me, to say the least. You can see the king. Actually, no, this is a queen's pawn opening. Oh, the early check from Glenn Jacob, pushing it back, trying to chase. Sorry, my English. Chase the bishop. The bishop going back to e7. This might be a blunder, but we don't know yet. There might be some tactics here to gain control over the strong diagonal, putting the bishop in the center, trying to get as much control over the wings as possible. We can see that the controls over to a3 as well as to h4. It's a very, very strong control there. Let's hop on to the both with 2 victories, Timothy versus James Owen. You can see here that both are very strong players. b3 from Timothy. James Owen developing his knight over to f6, challenging, putting some pressure over the pawn at e4. Bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, and both bishops from Timothy is now gone, with James Owen actually having both bishops. Now, bishops and knights, they have the same value, but in the game sense, I think the bishops are more versatile than the knights. The knights do have the capabilities to jump over pieces and make some really fancy plays if you know what you're doing. And this might just be a blunder, but not really. Putting some pressure over the rook at a1. Developing his knight. Now connecting the 2 knights, this has proven to be very strong. You can see that the bishop here in a very active position, putting extra pressure over the light squared diagonal for James Owen. Now let's hop on to another game. Okay, Ansel against Wilson. Oh, we can see here that I think Jonathan Joey here. Oh, looks like there's some technical issues over at Jonathan Joey. Let's see. Well, I hope he can reconnect soon, so that Nicholas isn't being isn't alone in the chessboard. Now let's go to Owen versus Hansen. Now, can I pull up the analysis board? Oh, it's only for the current moves. Okay, never mind. Oh, the check from Owen. Now he might actually no. Hansen needs to move his king, which means that he lost his right to castle at this point. Yep. While Owen here having already castling his king over at the king side. Very secure king position. All the pawns still intact. The queen still in the back rank, now trying to develop the dark square bishop as well as the two rooks. While for Hansen, we can see here a lot of activity with the knight being very, very central. Now might be able to find a fork here to the rook and the queen if he find a way to get rid of the dark squared bishop. Both players seems to have their dark square bishop intact, so there might be some amazing plays coming in. Now Owen here trying to think of a way. The rook over at h5 supporting the pawn, but the pawn is in a little bit of pressure from the discovered attack over the bishop at c1, but then again it's protected by the pawn over at f6. So this move might have a use one way or another, but it's just maybe it's for later on in the game. King moving to g2 now, protecting the three pawns as well as the rook in the process, reinforcing everything and trying to find a way out, maybe to h3. a6 from Hansen. Oh, trying to push the knight away. And the knight went back. The queen moving to the very, very strong diagonal over at h8. But we can see that there is a lot of protection from Owen here with three of his pawns supporting each other. Now he needs to find a way to destroy the pawn chain, maybe from behind, maybe from the center, maybe trying to find some sort of trade here in the middle. Center board control is very important. It's very flexible when you have a lot of center control, but has been proven by some of the more modern openings that you can actually fight for the center control from range away. So we can see here the queen actually supporting for that central control, the knight as well, and the bishop's pretty active. Let's hop on to another game. Are there any games that's done? Okay, let's go back to Alvin versus Glenn Jacob here. Okay, knight to d2, trying to push the knight away, but both knights well protected. Oh, okay, taking with the bishop, so this will support the linking of the rooks. Now Glenn Jacob still having all his pieces in the back rank, while Alvin here having his pieces very, very active. Very active pieces being slopped over, like the pawns. We can see the pawn structure. Maybe Alvin needs to find a pawn break somewhere in order to more develop his pieces later on in the game, because his bishop, although it has moved, but doesn't really have anywhere to go. It's not protecting anything. It's really, really passive actually. Let's see, Glenn Jacob might be able to take the pawn, but no. Okay, rook takes. Now, if Glenn Jacob takes the pawn over at b4, then the rook is going to take a8, and that's pretty much a free rook for Alvin. So let's hope that he doesn't blunder his rook away. Now bishop to b4 might be an idea, but still. Oh, pushing the pawn. Pawn takes. Oh, this might be the end of the pawn chain for Alvin. You can see here a lot of empty files now for Glenn Jacob to do maybe some really nasty plans here with his queen and his 2 rooks. Maybe back ranking it somehow. Oh, but the rooks has been taken. Queen takes. Both pretty balanced. Going for the check. Now it's Alvin's choice whether he wants to cover it up. Oh, he takes with the queen, and that might just be a blunder from Glenn Jacob. Maybe a Botez gambit here, we can see from Glenn Jacob. Very interesting plays. Very interesting plays, we can see. Both players were very strong when I used to play them personally. So yeah, let's see other games. Let's go back to Timothy versus James Owen. Moving the king over to f1. Okay, we can see that there might be some ideas with the rooks here from James Owen being centralized and linked up. Ooh, queen to h2. This might be some mate in one stuff. It's just that I guess I'm not good enough to see any checkmates. But there has to be one. Oh, actually, yeah. If the queen goes to... Oh, wait, no, never mind. Can go... Oh, wait, no, yeah. Because of the rook covering the e file. If the queen moves to h1, that's pretty much checkmate. So, I think this is pretty much game over. And the game... Oh, that... Yeah, that works too, I guess. So now it's not mate in one. The king having some sort of passageway to escape. That's pretty good. Pretty good play from Timothy. That might just be the best move. If not, it's at least it's one of the best moves to play. James Owen. Not that much advantage in material, but surely a huge advantage in time. 2 minutes advantage and +1 in material. The queen. Oh, the queen from Timothy. It's in a very awkward position. Oh, taking c5. The queen might have some ideas here, while the rook's having all the open file here. The C file is open, the B file with one of the pawns, but that's pretty easy to get rid of. Maybe just keep pushing the pawn. Okay, let's see. Oh, it looks like a lot of games are done. So Wilson with pretty much a clean slate here. James Owen. Oh, it's still ongoing. Okay. So Owen here winning against, I think it was it Hansen? No. Yeah, it's against Hansen. So he won against Hansen. Ansel lost against Wilson. And we can see the last 2 games. Alvin versus Glenn Jacob here. You can see it ended pretty rough, I think. A lot of blunders in the game, but still pretty good for the rating that is given. All the players are very strong, but you know, all of us are no grandmaster. Ooh, takes. Now, there might be a lot of trades going on. Ooh. Oh my goodness. James Owen making some massive plays here. Now the rook moved to e1. Now e1 might have some ideas, but then there's only the rook, so not much that can happen at this point. This is going to be a longer game. We're going to the end game. Now we can see in the end game, Timothy is up a pawn. But yeah, actually both players are pretty even with Timothy up a pawn. This might result in one passed pawn that might just end the game. So we can see here, rook to e6, challenging the pawn line over. James Owen with 1 minute advantage, going for the check, moving the king over, going for another check, moving the king over once more. Oh, challenging the rook. Now moving the king forward might just be a blunder, because then the pawns can easily give some pressure to the king. But maybe there's another way that I might not see here. a6, trying to push the pawn. At this point, the a pawn is pretty much unstoppable. Going for the check, and ooh, the rook move. What kind of move is James Owen going to do? Now Timothy is up a pawn, but down by 1 minute. You can see here a lot of creative plays that can be done. James Owen still waiting for James Owen here. James Owen with the black pieces. Moving the rook over to h2. And the king takes the pawn. Rook goes for the check. And now Timothy is up a pawn with a possibility of a passed pawn. While James is, oh my goodness, and Timothy with another pawn. And both pawns are pretty much passed pawns at this point. He can just promote to a king, and that's pretty much game over. Unless James Owen found a way to change the tides. Okay, pinning the pawn to the king with check, discover attack, so the pawn can't really move. Now if, oh, but the check. Now this might just give Timothy here some room to move. Let's see. Let's refresh the page again to see. Okay, so all of the games are done. You can see the current rankings. Number 1 being Wilson Lewis. Number 2 being James Owen, who is currently still playing against Timothy in the 3rd rank. But we will see here. Still trying to challenge for the pawn over at a6. Ooh, the rook with check. And it's a draw. It's a very, very tight game with 53 moves. Oh my goodness. And that's the end of round 3. Two rounds left to find the victor of IBM Olympics 2021 chess tournament. Currently, Wilson Lewis leading with 3 points. James Owen with 2.5. Timothy with 2.5. Owen with 2. Alvin with 1.5. 1.5. Glenn Jacob with 1. Ansel with 1. Hansen with 1. Nicholas with 1. And Jonathan with 0. Okay, 5 seconds until the 4th round. That is all. Oh, and the game is on. Wilson Lewis versus James Owen. Timothy fighting against Owen. Nicholas against Alvin. Glenn Jacob against Ansel now. Jonathan Joy against Hansen Lau. Let's hope that Jonathan Joy here doesn't have any more technical issues. I hope he is here and playing now with the king's pawn opening by Hansen. Let's see. Wilson Lewis against James Owen, already doubling the pawns, taking the pawn over at the over at e5. Now challenging a5 with the knight. Now with the non-existent d pawn, this might just create some ideas for for white. White here not having the f pawn. I think losing the f pawn is less of a problem than if you were to lose the d pawn. The d pawn being one of the main centralizing pawn. You want to centralize your pieces, having active pieces. Now, the bishop pinning. Oh no! What's the plan here? What's the game plan here? Normally, some people will go back to h4, keeping the pressure on the knight with the discover attack on the queen. But I guess Wilson Lewis thinks otherwise. He is still up by 3 pieces worth of material, and now he is not. Everything is balanced. James Owen, actually, in my opinion, James Owen is in an advantage with both of his bishops still on the board. The bishop proving to be very powerful if put and being used right in the stronger diagonals. Fianchettoing the bishop is a good idea, but sometimes that's not the best idea because sometimes the bishop can be active without fianchettoing the bishop. Ooh, and the push on the a pawn to a5, challenging the pawn structure here in the a and b file. Wilson Lewis will need to find a response. Or challenging the bishop in d6. Now, there might be some sort of attack here that's already found by either player, by both players. Moving the bishop back. Keeping the pressure in the diagonal, actually. So if something were like a push on the b pawn, then bishop can just take, and it's pretty much control over a very, very strong diagonal. Eliminating slowly the pawn structure, but then it's actually opening up the a file for the rook for Wilson Lewis, James Owen. Trying to find a response. Let's hop on to the game. Timothy against Owen. Knight to h4. Ooh, and knight takes f6. Is that a pawn? No, it's a bishop actually. Okay. Losing a bishop. Timothy having his light squared bishop. Still very powerful if used right. Now, Timothy have castle to the king side, while Owen here actually not having any sort of castling moments yet. Timothy having the more active pieces. The bishop challenging h7, but still being protected by the knight over at f6. The queen might have some ideas here, but of course this is protected again by the knight over at f6. This might just, the knight might just be protecting too much, and this might just be a possible attack. The check on the e file, moving the king over, and I think that is losing the castling privilege altogether, because I think he could have just castled queenside, but now knight to g6 with check and pawn takes. Now the h file is very, very empty. This might be very tempting to move the queen here sometime in the future and maybe find some sort of checkmate in the back rank. in the corner over at h1. I mean h8. Oh, I'm sorry. A lot of things happen in h8. A lot of things happen in all the 4 corners, because the 4 corners you can checkmate easier in the corners rather than if you were to be in the central part of the board. Now we can see the pawn push to c4, being protected by both the bishop and the knight, while the pawn over at d5 here being protected by the knight and the queen. Now not much attack is going on. Bishop going to f5, trying to find some activity here, challenging the bishop over at d3. Not much happening here. Pretty balanced game, I'd say. Very good pacing. Ooh, bishop takes, and this is pretty much a bishopless game. It's going to be very, very interesting. With no bishops on the board, the diagonal is left for the queen, but then the rook and the queen, very, very classic duo. They can achieve a lot of checkmate styles. Because the queen is a very, very powerful piece. We have seen that the queen can deliver checks from all over the board, even on the diagonals, which is, I'd say, the fancier way of using the queen. Now rook takes with check, forcing the king to move again. Now Timothy here with, actually no, he is in a time disadvantage, but only for 20 seconds. Ooh, this is some mate in one stuff here. I mean, personally, I can't see the mate, even though I feel like it should be. And I think if he moved his rook over to e file, that's pretty much checkmate, right? Oh wait, no, because then the knight can protect, and then some. This is some, yeah, this is some mate in one stuff here. I think we are going to witness a checkmate from Timothy. Very, very good game. Okay, and we can see that that's actually the first match that is done. Oh, and followed by Alvin's match against Nicholas. Alvin being victorious here. Amazing. Okay, let's see. Let's refresh the page. Wilson Lewis versus James Owen. Okay, let's see. h4 from James Owen. Having, oh wait, no, actually from Wilson Lewis, having the white pieces, James Owen with the black pieces, having both bishops, and Wilson Lewis having only a queen. Now pawn pushing, letting the discovered attack from the bishop. A lot of possibilities here for a passed pawn, we can see, but the queen handling the very active corner, trying to be pushed away by the bishop, moving the bishop to f8. The queen moving, but still maintaining the same pressure. Ooh, trying to push the queen away. Queen takes f6. Oh, pushing the pawn. Now we can see that the queen has lost control of the diagonal. At this point, James Owen can just push the pawn, maybe getting some support over at b4, bishop to b4. Maybe that's an idea, and then just pushing the c pawn as well. Now with this, I think if James Owen find a way to push his pawns, I think that might be good. But material-wise, Wilson Lewis here is in an advantage, as well as a time advantage of 40 seconds. But with this position, I think you might actually need to activate the king as well to deliver the checkmate. While in James Owen, you can see the pawns very, very free to do whatever they want. Bishop to h5, supporting the pawn. Queen going back to e4. Trying to find some checks here, maybe. Not much back rank activity that can be done. Only a few checks, maybe going to a8 and then going back to a2, keeping the pressure over the pawn at e2, trying to challenge for the but then there's the bishop covering it, so I feel like maybe to a1, reinforcing the king as well. Maybe that's a better move. James Owen trying to find a move here after queen e4. Let's see the other games. And we can see that a lot of games are done now. Glenn Jacob against Ansel. Glenn Jacob being victorious. It's a checkmate delivered with, as I said, the classic duo, the rook and the queen. Glenn Jacob having a very safe king. Okay, let's see. Wilson Lewis and James Owen here. James Owen against Wilson Lewis here. g3, bishop to g3 from James Owen. Wilson Lewis with the white pieces still being up by 2 pieces worth of material, but then again, the passed pawns, you can never ignore the passed pawns. Wilson Lewis might have a chance here to actually get 4 wins in a row. He might just be the first. There's still one last round to go after this game. James Owen against Wilson Lewis. In the end game for pretty long now, actually. Trying to find some tactics. Still having the passed pawns. Very, very powerful here. You can see the bishop to g3 actually supporting the passed pawn, covering e1. And the promotion. Oh, no. This might be... That might be a blunder there. That might just be a blunder. Maybe he should have taken, but then again, the bishop will take, so... Might just be a blunder. Now we can see the passed pawn. And the queen, I mean the bishop here covering the king. The pawns can't move, and the passed pawn. Oh my goodness, checkmate from James Owen. That's probably the craziest game ever in this tournament. Oh my goodness. And that's it for round 4. Now let's tell the participants to wait for round 5, which will start in 37 seconds. James Owen and Timothy will go against each other, I think in the final. So, and the rest will just... Yes. Oh, okay. Yes. Okay, so in 5 seconds we will see the next round. And if you want to listen the commentating, you can go over to YouTube. Okay, so now we are in YouTube. James Owen against Glenn Jacob. Glenn Jacob, is he throwing knight to h6 in his first move? Is he throwing the game? Is he letting James Owen to take the victory without any fight here? Okay, James Owen, normal development here. With e4, a king's pawn opening. Okay. Now the first, the earlier castle from Glenn Jacob. James Owen might find a queenside castling here. Now g5 from Glenn Jacob. Knight takes to G. Knight takes G5. C6 from Glenn Jacob. And if James Owen, so it's James Owen against Timothy 25 or Timothy Christian. One of them will be the winner, actually, unless, of course, something happened. Now we can see James Owen 10.25 tiebreak. Okay, let's see Timothy's game. Timothy against Wilson Lewis. Both very strong players we have seen. Queen to D3 from Wilson Lewis, trying to activate his queen early. The 7th move. But Timothy here already moving his queen. I think it's it's for a check. Wait, was it? Okay, knight to C6. Trying to put some pressure over the pawn at D4. Now knight F3, reinforcing the pawn at D4. Now we can see here the reinforcement very strong. Okay, king to D1, retreating the king from the attack, from the discovered attack from the queen with e takes D4 check. This is pretty much the last game for tonight. I mean the last round, actually, not the last game. The last round. We'll be having 5 games tonight. It has been quite an interesting night with some interesting games that will definitely be worth analyzing after the game. I mean, after this whole event. I want to see that evaluation bar just jumping up and down and up and down. We have seen some pretty nasty blunders in this tournament, but as well as some really creative plays. Now Owen against Alvin with the black pieces. Now, even though that it's against Timothy against James Owen who will win the tournament, interesting games might still be able to happen outside of possible winners. Oh, my English, I'm very sorry. And Hansel against Jonathan Joy. It seems that Jonathan Joy has stopped getting technical issues, which is great. But Ansel here getting more material, a lot of material here from Jonathan Joy. But Jonathan Joy here with almost 2 minutes worth in time advantage. Now, if he uses this right, now he might just time out Ansel and win just by time. It won't change the results, but still, that will be a very interesting game. Let's see, Nicholas against Hansen. Hansen, still strong player. A lot of king's pawn opening we have seen in this game. Let's see. So we have seen F3. I think this is some sort of King's Indian from Nicholas, and Hansen, I think he responded with getting the central control with the king's pawn opening, yes, with E5. Now bishop takes B4. So it was C takes B4, and now bishop takes B4. Rook to B1. Getting that pressure over the B file. Now if he can link up the rook, it's fine. But we can see here very underdeveloped pieces. The bishops still in their initial squares. The knight over at g1 still being AFK, and of course the rook barely moving. And it's been 12 rounds. This should be the middle game where all the pieces are active, where checks are given, but we can see here that Nicholas here having very passive pieces. This might be a disadvantage because if there is something in this diagonal and the rook is dead, and if the rook isn't dead, then you know, possible forks. Let's see, maybe some sort of fork against the knight and the bishop, or the knight and the king with check. If let's see, something like this. This is also a good. Yeah, so the knight is pinned with check, right? So if the knight goes to e4 and then jumps around to this gap over at g3, then it'll basically just fork the bishop and the rook. But I don't think Hansen sees it yet. Moving the bishop, maybe getting ready for that attack. She's moving the bishop, but still giving that same pressure to the king. The knight can't move anywhere, so there's that. Okay, let's see. Oh, it looks like James Owen and Glenn Jacob has finished their match. 22 moves. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's checkmate with queen takes h7. Oh my goodness. This is crazy. Crazy. Some crazy stuff here going on. Now we can see now we can see the evaluation bar. Okay, so sorry. Apparently I disabled the evaluation bar. Now white is pretty much winning, and I think white won, right? Yeah, white won with the At this point it's made in 3 and blunder, and it's made in 1. It's unfortunate for Glenn Jacob, but James Owen here, very, very, very strong player. Okay, so now let's see Timothy against Wilson Lewis. So I can't seem to turn on the evaluation bar here, so there's that. But we can still analyze this game manually, I guess. Now knight takes e4. Now if Wilson Lewis wins against Timothy, I think he might be the winner here. Oh wait, no. If Wilson Lewis wins against Timothy, then James Owen will be the winner. And if Timothy wins, then I think, depending on the tiebreak, I think James Owen might be the winner still. But still, we still don't know yet. Bishop to e5 from Timothy. Now, a lot of attacks going on. Very active pieces. Very active pieces. Now the knight's very centralized. Now he can find some massive forks here. This is a very dirty fork, and he didn't see it. So Timothy might get this fork over the bishop and the rook, and there's like the rook getting the open d file. Very crazy. Okay, we can see here. Oh, and he didn't go for the fork. Actually, he's going for f2, still giving the pressure to the rook, but I guess Timothy didn't see the fork. Maybe he is up in material, so he does have a chance to win. But Wilson Lewis, he is not someone that is easy to beat as well. So two strong players here. Fianchettoing the bishop over the very, very active diagonal, but still with the pawn here, not much can be done. Maybe moving the bishop over to a3 might be a better idea, challenging the rook here in f8. Okay, so bishop to c4. Ooh, pinning the pawn over at f7. You can see here, bishop to f6. Still not breaking the pin. Actually, Wilson Lewis. Now, down in material by a lot of material, but still having both bishops. Now, if done right, I've said a million times, having both bishops can be very deadly. You can checkmate with just a bishop if done right. I think the fool's mate is with a bishop. I think it's possible with a bishop, but mainly people will play it with the queen. So there's that. Now blocking the a3 square. Maybe he has some other ideas with the dark squared bishop. And knight to a7. Moving the knight back. Reinforcing the pawn, but this might be a blunder here. Isn't it? No, because the pawn over at a3, yeah. So the pawn over at a3 stops a lot of attacks. Now the bishop in d3 might need to move to find this covered attack on the rook. Now if the bishop here can do amazing things. If somehow the bishop finds a way to just keep challenging something, then it's a free rook, right? But it's still, since the rooks are linked, so it's going to be a trade. So Timothy, the piece advantage +3. Once again, +3. You can see here, Timothy with the white pieces, pretty balanced in time. 3 minutes on the clock for both players. Okay, pushing the pawn to c4, challenging the bishop. Putting a lot of pressure here. Now the rook can take. The rook can take. Now the bishop here. The bishop can do creative things here. The knight can support the bishop. Now b takes a4. This is freeing up the a3. Actually no, the a3 is free since last move. So getting that very strong diagonal. Now if he moved his bishop over to a3, then that's like a rook for a rook, which is good. In this case, it's probably the best thing. But when you're down pieces, you don't really want to trade. The knight supporting the bishop. Are there any checks here? I don't think so. Oh, bishop takes. I guess pawn takes and then rook takes. Oh, Oh, rook takes and then pawn takes. Okay. And the knight. Still, the bishop here, casually sitting here. The bishop still having potential, but it is still not launched yet. So, my goodness, Wilson Lewis here. This attack here on the bishop. Now, it'll force the knight to go away. Then if he had a knight, the rook away. And if he has a rook, he can just push the rook on the 8th row. Oh my goodness. Pushing the pawn over at g6, challenging the bishop. Now the light squared bishop. The light squared bishop can't really do much. Moving it back, keeping the pressure in. Oh my goodness. a3. Oh no. Oh no. This can be very, very devastating. Now this pawn can just move, but it's not really doing anything. So maybe the knight can move after the bishop moves, because it's no longer protecting the c1. But still, I don't see the use of it. Maybe moving the rook back to f1. Maybe that's the general idea. Knight to b5, challenging another pawn. This is a free pawn, or as actually no, it's protected by the bishop over at a1. Oh, with check. Now he has to take, or he needs to move his piece, his king. Now moving the king might let him get a piece, but now if he moves the knight at e2, then now he can take. Okay, so Timothy here, he might just did a mistake. Not really a blunder, I'd say, but still not the best move. Now at this point, this diagonal is very, very delicious for Wilson. Being down by 4 pieces, but there might be a possible checkmate. Now, if the rook moves and this rook somehow goes back to back rank and the rook can't take the white rook, it's still checkmate, because the king can't move to either g7 as well as h8. And now the rook trying to find the checkmate, but that's just going to result in... Oh wait, no, actually, a1 is very much protected with the bishop, while the bishop still giving that pressure. Now this... Okay, you can see the knight moves. Now just keep on checking, keep on checking. Still no forks yet. Rook takes. Okay, so basically what Wilson wants to wait for is the black rook to be anywhere that's not the back rank. And if he gets that, then that's checkmate. Okay, so there's 2 defenders and there's only 1 attacker. Not a good idea to capture. Moving the bishop from the strong diagonal. Oh my goodness. Supporting the rook. This might be okay. Okay, both low on time. 28 seconds remaining. This is, oh my goodness. Takes h4. King g6. King h1. King h1 is not a good spot. King h2. Oh my goodness. P-moving. The king moves now. Oh no. Wilson Lewis here. He is desperate. He's trying to find time. Timothy here with a knight and a rook and 3 seconds. 2 seconds. 3 seconds advantage. Wilson Lewis trying to make something happen here. Being a few moves away from checkmate. Wilson Lewis trying to find a way. Oh my goodness. And Timothy getting the promotion. Rook takes bishop. Oh my goodness. Oh, this is... And the king keeps on moving. The king keeps on moving, and it's... The bishop can move. The bishop can move. And Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! 0. Ah, and black is victorious with white timing out. And it's 4.5 and 4.5, but James Owen ending up with the victor with a 12.75 tiebreak and a crazy 1893 performance. Oh my goodness. This has been a very, very good tournament. Okay. So the tournament has ended. The winner here is James Owen. So I would like to congratulate James Owen for the game. It's with 4 wins and 1 draw. It's really crazy, and I guess I would like to thank everyone else who joins the tournament, because without everyone else, then this tournament won't be as fun and as exciting as it is. Now, I think the tournament has ended, so before we go anywhere else, I think I would like to remind everyone to fill in the registration out form. And before doing anything else, I guess we will close this event off with a prayer. Let us pray. Thank you, God, for your blessing throughout this event. Please bless us in our next activities so everything can go as smoothly as you wish. And thank you for your constant blessing throughout this event and more. In your name we pray. Amen. So thank you everyone for joining the chess tournament once again. Don't forget to fill in the registration out form. That is all for me, and I guess I will see you in the closing ceremony of IBM Olympics. Be sure to join the closing ceremony as well. Thank you. And thank you everyone who tuned in to the YouTube live stream. It has been an amazing live stream. There will be another live stream in a few days in this channel. Feel free to join in. It will be another tournament that is not related to this one, but still feel free to support the channel if you want to. And with that said, this has been IBM Olympics. Thank you very much.